Hello EFD squad and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me is the beard, it's the ginge. Let's dive straight into your questions, and if you've got any, send them in next week to us on Twitter or leave them in the comments below. Thank you very much for participating. First question comes from Jamie9436061. Taking the biscuit there, Jamie. Can you see any of the top six clubs falling out of the top six, or clubs like Bayern, Juve or PSG not winning the league? Now, in short, the answer there is no, Van Straten.
No, not at all.
Zero chance.
Joe, you on
Almost
board?
zero chance.
With
Zero
that?
chance.
Don't you think there's going to be a change in the hegemony when it comes to the top clubs? So let's reword this question slightly. Which league do you think, apart from the Premier League, is going to be the most entertaining to watch this season on the continent? Starting with you, Peeves.
I think that over the last couple of seasons, we've seen a real improvement in the quality we're getting out of Serie A. I think Serie A has actually overtaken La Liga and the Bundesliga as being one of the most entertaining leagues in Europe. I think it's up there with the Premier League now, because the sheer depth of good sides there is kind of quite frightening. It's gone from pretty much only having Juve and Napoli, and to some extent Roma, to having those three plus Inter, plus Atalanta, who are very good, plus Lazio, and then on the outskirts of that, Milan as well. So we're seeing some real kind of depth coming in players-wise. You know, Inter have obviously strengthened a great deal. Roma have got Monchi in, so you imagine that they're going to be stable, but perhaps not title challengers would be kind of my guess. Lazio, I think the continued presence of Simone Inzaghi is going to keep them reasonably competitive. They've done a couple of good signings, but I imagine we'll go into that in a minute. I mean, it's just very difficult to enjoy leagues where there's really one good team and a bunch of kind of no-hopers, and Italy is not that anymore. There is going to be, I think, a clear separation between Juve and the rest of the good sides in the league, but those sides are also really quite exciting, and the competition between them will be fun to watch.
Yeah, just to kind of reaffirm what you've said, I think Atalanta battering a free-spending Everton last season in the Europa League is kind of indicative of Serie A's improvements. And also, I mean, there's a genuine title race last year, wasn't there, in Serie A, which wasn't the case across Europe's top five. The gap between the top two in Germany was 21 points, in England 19 points, Spain 14 points, and France 13 points, where you had Napoli in Serie A spending 21 weeks on the top of the table, only dropping off at game week 28. And there was also an incredible battle for the top four, wasn't there? Roma finished on 77 points, Inter on 72, Lazio on 72. That game against Inter and Lazio effectively deciding Champions League football was incredible at the tail end of the season. And we also had four teams kind of battling to avoid relegation, didn't we, joining Benevento and Verona, who were horrendous. With four sides separated in the last place. I think that was Bologna, Cagliari, Spal and Crotone. So drama at both ends of the table. Do you have anything to add in terms of Serie A, Joe, or do you want to move on to another league?
I'll move on to a different league, because I think overall, potentially Serie A is more competitive, but I still think Juventus are going to run away with the league, particularly with the fact that Napoli have lost the key player in Jorginho and their manager. So I think they'll be fairly comfortable winners. I think potentially more of an interesting title race is in Spain, where we've talked about it in the past, that Atletico Madrid stand a fantastic chance of winning La Liga this year. They've outspent both of their rivals in Barcelona and Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid have spent nearly 70 million and Barcelona about $1 million less. I think Atletico 98 million and Barcelona 97. So this is the first time in a long time I can actually remember them outspending their rivals, and I think their signings, we've talked about them already, won't go into them too much, have been superb. Barcelona, I think, are in a little bit of a problem area. I know that Vidal's come through the door, but to me seems quite short term.
Yes.
I don't have a massive problem with it. It's not massively expensive, £30 million. It's not a huge risk, but doesn't scream classic Barcelona to me.
I think Barcelona and Juventus are having the same sort of summers wherein they're strengthening, but not for the future, and their business is weird. Like, the average profile, age-wise, in their squad is sort of late 20s.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, I don't know, I think you might see those areas, those problematic areas, really come back to bite them in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
But for now, for next season, it's exciting, especially for the neutral, right? And if Vidal in a Barca shirt, what is going on?
He's the perfect upgrade on Paulinho. I mean, last season he was absolutely spectacular for Bayern, like in terms of goal scoring, creation, defensive output, pass progression. I mean, he is still an unbelievable all-round midfielder. And in a way, if you can't get your perfect guy who is going to be a long-term option, Barcelona are the kind of side where they can buy a guy, get 2 years out of him, and swap him out for the next person until the perfect person is available. They can afford to do that. So I don't have an issue with it. In that, I think actually maybe I was a little bit harsh in saying that there weren't good sides outside of the top 3 in La Liga. Like this season, you've got Valencia, obviously in their second season under Marcelino. That'll be interesting, though they were overperforming expected goals last season.
One of their star players has returned to PSG, and Guedes.
Yeah, Guedes has gone. But on the other hand, they've got Kondogbia in on a free. I think that they're doing interesting stuff. I think Sevilla will stabilise under Pablo Machin, who obviously they got off Girona, and also Villarreal have spent a lot of money on upgrading their attack. They've brought in Moreno from Espanyol, who I think got 16 league goals last season. They've brought in Carl Toko Ekambi from Angers, who I think got maybe 22 last season. So they've spent a combined 35, 40 mil just on their attack. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know, man. I'm quite excited to see the title race in La Liga this year. We talk about like that age profile, just to go back to it briefly, about the players they've signed and some of their attacking talent. I'm a little bit surprised Barcelona didn't bring in a striker this summer. Look, Suarez is a fantastic striker still. I think last season he was still taking 3.8 shots per game, which is similar numbers to 15-16, getting about 60% of his shots on target. So still one of the elite strikers across Europe, but in the same way that Vidal comes in as a potential Paulinho replacement, next season, I do think they have to sign a striker to replace Luis Suarez. There's only so long they can keep kind of fettering him in and out of the team with the hope that Lionel Messi can produce in the number 9 role.
But isn't that one of the advantages of getting Malcolm in means they can play Messi there? And you know what, Paco Alcácer was good when he played there last season. He had good output. But I do see the concern about Suarez. I mean,
I think they need to bring an elite striker.
Well, 2 seasons ago he got 40 goals in the league. The season after that I think it was 25, and then this season I think it was 16. So his numbers are declining.
But is that partly to do with the fact that Barcelona aren't the attacking force they once were in those original seasons?
Probably.
I mean
no Neymar.
Yeah, no Neymar.
And no Enrique.
When they had
that
front three of Messi, Neymar, and Suarez, and they were all in their pomp, it was unstoppable. So that's probably part of the reason he was scoring so freely. For me, I know you talked about it last week. You're quite a fan of bringing in somebody like Icardi, aren't you, for Barcelona?
I think kind of perfect guy to operate in the front 3, and he's tail end of last season at Inter, he was kind of feeding off scraps and still scoring an awful lot of goals. Admittedly, a lot of them were from set pieces. I think Inter was scoring as many goals from open play as Torino in the league, which doesn't really bode well, but they've made great moves to kind of change that, haven't they? And they've brought in a lot more attacking prowess, especially if Nainggolan can play in a more advanced position. I think Barcelona kind of at the other end of the spectrum, if we move away from battle-born, experienced superstars, a worrying trend for them is not progressing any youth as well, not hearing any buzz around a La Masia graduate. Sergi Roberto kind of still not being entrusted to play in central midfield, kind of still being an auxiliary right-back. Rafinha, I imagine he will leave the club as well, although Inter Milan weren't particularly keen on keeping him on a permanent. So it'll be interesting to see if Valverde can bring any talent through, because Real Madrid are doing a much better job of it at the moment. And someone like Achraf Hakimi joining Dortmund is a fascinating move, and I think he's going to get a lot of experience there, and he's going to come back, if he can remain injury-free, because he did have an injury-hit season in Germany once before, didn't he? Then he's ready to then embed into the first team straight away. And there's a couple of areas in which kind of they've got youth players who excel. I keep forgetting the name of that forward. He looks a little bit like a Spanish Patrick Roberts. He plays up front. Mayoral, I mean, he's prolific at sort of Castilla and kind of under 21 level, isn't he? So maybe he's ready to blood into the side as well. But should we move on to the other leagues? We've got Liga 1 and the Bundesliga. For you,
dead. Both of them.
I mean, I was going to say for you, which one is the more interesting league?
Oh, definitely Liga 1.
Yes.
Clearly Liga 1. Like Liga 1, it's amazing to me that nobody's made a move for Thauvin or for Memphis Depay this summer. I think that those are two of the best wingers in Europe. And Thauvin's a little bit older. And the problem is when you're...
Newcastle on Thauvin.
When you're saddled with this reputation of having failed in England,
literally,
even though Depay didn't really get a chance to fail in England, then it's really hard to get rid of it. And those are the clubs that could afford to take a player off Lyon. It's really hard to get guys out of there. But Memphis Depay last season led Lyon in shots, led them in key passes. He got 19 goals, 13 assists in the league. That's the same as Neymar, admittedly in some more minutes. But it means he was involved in 6 goals more than Nabil Fekir. And yet people are out there making £66 million offers for Nabil Fekir. And nobody, you haven't heard a sniff about Memphis Depay.
Especially as he was in the ascendancy. He got better as the season went on. He finished the season on absolute fire, didn't he?
Well, his numbers, it's what we always, when he was in the Eredivisie, people said, look, this guy's being involved in about 7 shots a game, which is elite. There are about 5 players in the Premier League who've done that over the last 10 years. And
7 shots a game in the Eredivisie,
yeah,
he was
taking like 5 and producing another 2, which were kind of the numbers that Suarez did in the Premier League. And everyone said, can he do that in a better league? And he has done that in a better league. Like, he is now doing that in Liga, and he's producing about 6.4 shots per game.
And he had a tough ride of it at Man
outrageous.
United. He was playing under Louis van Gaal, who, let's face it, was never the most free-flowing manager at Manchester United. And he got on as well by the Luke Shaw injury. Him and Luke Shaw were an awesome combination down United's left at the start of that season for about 5 months. Yeah. And then Luke Shaw snapped his leg. They couldn't find a left-back cover. Memphis didn't do enough defensive work to support the work Luke Shaw was putting in. So when he got injured, basically that partnership fell apart. Memphis got lost, got dropped, and never got back into the side.
Yeah, and when you're competing with
Martial came in
for time on that left-hand side, and when Martial was, not getting a sniff, it is perhaps time to move on. And what I love about Lyon and Roma as well, to an extent as well, is they're kind of a renaissance club, aren't they? They bring players back from the dead, they're you alluded to it earlier with Monchi at the helm. I imagine there's going to be a few more players whose careers are resurrected in France this campaign.
I think one of the reasons that people haven't gone for Tovan and Memphis is that most of the big teams in Europe are pretty stocked for wide, young talent. Other than maybe Arsenal, I can't think of, but even Chelsea, on that left-hand side, it's likely that Hazard's going to play. I just can't see many teams. You look at Bayern, they're pretty stocked. Juventus could potentially make a move for him, but Man City got loads, United have got loads.
But Roma were looking, Arsenal were looking, Chelsea were looking. I mean, Real Madrid are looking, but they're probably in a slightly different market. Atleti were looking, but got Gelson Martins, who I think it's less money, but he's an inferior player. So I don't know.
It's not a desperate position for
Inter
teams.
should be looking. Inter were looking at Malcolm. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it needs to be a certain calibre of club to be able to afford what Lyon will ask and to make him want to leave Lyon.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would really like him to get that move to a top club, because I still think Memphis Depay is still only 24. I mean, he's I think 7 months younger than Fekir as well. He's still got the time to become a superstar. Tovan is now coming off the back of 2 seasons where he's been excellent. He's a little bit older, but you'd have thought that you could get Tovan for maybe a little bit less money as well.
I just can't see Tovan at a truly elite club across Europe. I don't know why. Maybe that's just me being proper.
It goes back to the narrative.
Yeah, I think it potentially goes back to the narrative.
Which, I mean, Marseille, let's face it, Marseille, now they're cash rich, new owners, it's the American, isn't it? They're going to be pushing for the title more so than any time in the last 10 years. So he'll be playing Champions League football, he's going to be playing at an elite level. And you know what, if he can do it at the Champions League, then maybe that does rouse the interest of someone, because unfortunately, you can't, it's like the Eredivisie, isn't it, sometimes League, and you take their output with a pinch of salt. But let's have a look at Monaco, because I expect them, with the moves they've made, to potentially be the biggest contenders to the crown, although I've said I think there's every chance they'll finish 4th.
Sure.
But let's take a look at their credentials anyway. Despite selling Lamar for 63 mil, what a good price that is. Fabinho for 40, Congolo to Huddersfield for 18, that's an interesting move, and Mbappe for 121. They're back at it again, aren't they? The star factory Monaco. They're hoovering up some of the best domestic talent in the league. They brought in Golovin, obviously from Russia, and we think that is a hell of a coup, especially for 27 mil as well. But on a more domestic front, like I said, Ahulu, 24-year-old defensive midfielder from Strasbourg. Now his output is pretty sizable. 5 goals in 35 games, not bad for a defensive midfielder, but 4.1 tackles, interceptions as well, 1.1 shots and 1.1 dribbles per game. They're similar numbers to Ndombele from Lyon, who we really like. Sort of plays not in a similar position, I guess, because Ndombele is a little bit more progressive, kind of carries it through the midfield, doesn't he? But maybe Ahulu can do that under Monaco stewardship. You've got Samuel Granzier, who I don't know very much about, 21-year-old Troyes winger. He scored 3 and assisted 4 in 36 league and games last season. Pretty impressive considering that Troyes finished 19th. So he's been saved from the drop by Monaco. And Ronald Pierre Gabriel, 20-year-old defender who can play anywhere along that back four. Very tactically flexible from what I've sort of gauged. 16 Liga appearances last campaign, but 3.3 tackles and interceptions. 1 dribble per game for a defensive player, which shows that he's maybe adept as an attacking fullback. And 0.4 shots per game. So very attack-minded. And they still have kind of the core of that squad at the moment, let's say, in Subasic, Ronnie Lopez, Keita Balde. Perhaps core is a bit strong for him. He's yet to kind of make an impression, given the talent we know he has, given the output he displayed at Lazio the season before. They've got Pellegrini, Falcao. So there's still a good core of players there, and I expect Jardim's men to give it a good go. I think Champions League football definitely beckons, but what do you make of their title credentials?
I don't think they're going to be title contenders this year. I think it's like back-to-back transitional years is really hard to do. And I think now they've lost the entirety of that title-winning midfield, haven't they, in the form of Fabinho, who else was in there? Lamar, Bakayoko, Moutinho. They've all gone now. So I think it's going to be pretty difficult for Jardim. I actually don't think Jardim's going to be there for an awful lot longer. I think there's only so long you can keep taking a man's first 11 and asking him to produce another glorious team. And there will certainly be offers on the table for him at around Christmas, when about 5 top-tier managers have been sacked. So I think Jardim's time at Monaco might be numbered. They're going to do okay. Hopefully Keita Balde steps up a little bit more than he did last season, because we're kind of expecting more from him, aren't we now? So the pressure's on him a little bit. But as ever, Monaco, young talent. They might not have the best young talent in France like they used to anymore, though. I think Lyon and Marseille potentially pretty close now. Once upon a time, 2 seasons ago, everybody was like Monaco, best young talent in France.
Lyon are definitely contenders for that title.
Yeah.
But again, different business. Well, no, I suppose kind of similar business
it's
models.
Lyon
are quite cash rich as well.
And it's not that young at Lyon.
Yeah, it's also 23, 44
outside of that,
actually.
Their midfield is very young, but their attack line isn't. Their attack line is like in its prime. I don't know. Monaco still have guys who have been coming through, like Almami Touré and Georges at left back. So I still think that there's plenty going on there. And Alain Saint-Maximin maybe won't spend this season on loan.
Keeping hold of him, aren't they?
He looks like he's a superstar. I mean, he's always profiled like a superstar in relatively limited minutes.
Lupe Fiasco.
So it'd be nice if he could kind of, I don't know, push
Make
on a little bit under a good coach. So the interesting thing about Liga is always that you're seeing the future of football in the other big leagues, as opposed to really enjoying that league for what it is. Like we enjoy watching Lyon and we enjoy watching Monaco because we think, wow, these players are going to be stars when they end up in the Prem. That's a little bit unfair.
We have seen a little bit of teams have been a little bit more reticent and a little bit more. They've started to keep hold of the players a little bit better. Is what I'm trying to articulate. Like Lyon taking that firm stance with Fekir. You've got Marseille don't need to sell up quite as much now, did they? Monaco, they kind of changed their.
But Fekir was gone, wasn't it? They'd sold Fekir if it was not
PSG. Mbappe and Neymar. And so I think Liga and Serie A are making interesting moves in terms of trying to reframe their standing amongst the top 5.
Better than the Bundesliga, which is an absolute mess at the moment.
Yeah, the Bundesliga is a disaster.
It is. Thanks, Bayern. Anyway, which league are you guys looking forward to watching this season? Let us know in the comments below. Let's move on to Quickfire Questions. Quickfire Questions starts with @KSV345, and he has said, rate the top 6's transfer window from best to worst. I take it he means Premier League and not Europe's top 6 leagues, because that would be absolutely obscene.
From best to worst.
Best to worst.
I think worst.
Liverpool.
Are we all agreed that Tottenham?
Tottenham have by far.
Tottenham are worst. Yeah, they've done.
I don't think they're going to sign anyone.
Though they haven't sold. Like keeping hold of Rose, Alderweireld, like that's pretty good.
I think they're going to leave. They're all going to leave before the end of the window.
I think they've made them available for transfer.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. They're like publicising it at the moment, right? We're seeing a lot of leaked stuff because essentially they're saying we have things that we want to do. Please buy our players so that we can afford to do those things.
Literally.
I also think they've made Lucas Moura available. Which is their token signing from the last window.
I know.
Stupid.
How many times is Pochettino going to signing a winger?
Not been great so far, has it? Nkudu,
it's not good.
Although Nkudu's been good pre-season. Who's the other winger that departed? Back to
G.
Back to France. Clinton.
I'd rather have G than Nkudu though. Oh, anyway, Spurs have got to be bottom.
Spurs are definitely bottom.
Next, do we go?
Looks like Lewis Cook might join them though. If anyone.
Lewis Cook would be a good signing.
You like Lewis Cook, don't you?
30 million from Bournemouth.
Lewis Cook's 21 years old and has great baseline numbers, really good defensive numbers, pretty much the same as Moussa Dembele. In fact, they're better than Moussa Dembele. 2 dribbles a game as well, which is really solid with like a 75% success rate. When you're 21 years old, you've got another 3-4 years before you hit your peak. The chances of you turning into a Moussa Dembele type are not that bad if you've got a good coach who can like push you in that direction. Really good progressive passer as well. I think that Lewis Cook's actually an exciting young player, and Spurs would be the best possible landing place for him.
Fits Spurs' like signing profile quite well as well, doesn't it? Young English talent. And Pochettino's got a history of developing it.
And they're talking 20 to 30 million. I think that's a perfectly good price for a 21-year-old who is already a competent Premier League midfielder. Yeah. Like that's not bad at all.
Yeah, it'd be a big miss for Bournemouth, wouldn't it?
Tottenham and bottom, definitely.
And then where do we go? United, maybe?
Next in, I actually think Manchester City. And the reason I say Manchester City is that they have gone in for and missed out on, or then maybe Man City, Man United level, because I'll be getting banged in the comments right now for people for saying Man City. I'm not letting it influence you, but they are pretty close, and I think at Man City maybe just edge it because they've gone in for publicly and missed out on 2 central midfield targets in Jorginho and Fred, and they've been scuppered by 2 rival sides.
But their transfer business has been so good before.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to them massively.
They have the luxury.
If we're talking about this window,
that arse missing out on those players.
Yeah, agreed. But this window we're talking about, missed out on 2, bought in 1 winger that is probably going to play a peripheral role.
They've addressed none of their actual depth issues. That's a problem. Unless they're really going to bet hard on the youth coming through, like. They are asking for trouble.
And they kind of have Benjamin Mendy's almost like a new signing back, isn't it? What he featured 10 games last season maximum, and Laporte comes in after a kind of hit and miss.
But if Fernandinho gets injured, then they're in a position where they're playing Gundogan as a sole pivot or something, which I don't think he's well suited to, or maybe putting Fabian Delph back in there, which is fine, but at the same time you don't look at that and suddenly think Champions League and league winners. So it's a little bit ropey.
In terms of competing on multiple fronts, I agree, because there was various points in the season where Manchester City were failing to field a full bench for the Champions League, wasn't there? So a couple of players for the Champions League, yes, but I think they can afford to win the league
anyway,
at current, given the squad they have.
Agreed.
United a bit more difficult. Like they said they needed full-backs, they haven't addressed that. Said they needed centre-backs, they haven't addressed that.
They will get in.
They've got in one midfielder who might be good, might not be, we don't really know.
Matic is now injured for the first 3 weeks of the season.
Matic is injured. They've still got Martial, even though they've pretty much alienated him.
Diego Dalot seems like a bit of a Jose obviously rates him massively highly, so he comes in. Grant comes in as a 3rd choice goalkeeper, so that's fine. Nobody really cares about that. But yeah, they will sign another central defender before the window closes, and I'd be surprised if they don't let one go, probably in the form of Marcos Rojo.
But they had more to do, and their problems were more gaping and obvious than Man City. Yeah. So the fact they haven't addressed them is worrying.
Expecting Yerry Mina or Toby Alderweireld to join, probably before the end of the week.
A very different profile of centre back, but sure. Then I think it goes probably. I don't know.
Liverpool are top.
Liverpool are clearly top. I actually think Liverpool are the only club that I'd say have had a good window of the top 6, and I think and they still have up quite a few things.
I think Chelsea next, or Chelsea. Oh my God,
Chelsea in
Arsenal.
second. No, I don't. I think Arsenal have not had a great window. Chelsea need to do some stuff, and they should have taken the Willian money and invested it in a young winger. That's really your issue with Chelsea. But the squad's still pretty deep. They've kept Hazard.
Jorginho's a great addition.
Depends what happens.
Sarri's come in, and we actually like that move. If we count that as a transfer.
There's various players that can only get better as well. Big
Loftus-Cheek's
acquisitions from last season, like Bakayoko.
The keeper question is still up in the air, but I don't think Courtois is that amazing. They'll probably end up overpaying for somebody, but to a certain extent they don't care. They'll get in a decent
Courtois in his current form, in his I don't want to be at Chelsea, abrasive, dickish self at the moment is not it wouldn't be a horror show to replace him with Kasper Schmeichel. I agree. So who is left on the list to analyse?
Arsenal,
and it's Arsenal.
Arsenal, okay.
It's okay. It's an all right window.
Torreira's fantastic.
Lucas Torreira's a great signing.
Fairly pragmatic with Socrates as well.
Guendouzi looks like a good bet.
Not the biggest fan of Socrates.
Bernd Leno.
Not a fan of Leno, not a fan of Socrates, but they needed a keeper, they needed a centre-back. The thing is about Arsenal, their defence was dreadful last season, and actually personnel-wise, they haven't really addressed that.
I agree.
They've got in a backup right-back, that's good, so like they didn't have that last season, but they haven't actually improved their backline really much at all. The players aren't any better. In fact, most of them are a year older. In the case of, say, Nacho Monreal.
That became a big contentious issue towards the end of Wenger's reign, didn't it? Who had he improved as a player in the last 5 seasons plus?
Attackers, usually.
Whereas you're hoping that Unai Emery can get more out of Aaron Ramsey. You're hoping he can get more out of...
I think the issue is Mustafi.
Provide a bit more defensive stability, with Lucas Torreira and playing next to Granit Xhaka. So do you think he's going to do more with the players he's got and that kind of offsets that slightly? Or are you still kind of a little bit amiss as to signing Socrates?
I think that he, anybody who comes in and puts in some structure, which he will get a better performance out of the defence. Because last season it was bad players with no structure. If you put bad players with a better structure, they will be better.
Similar to the job Conte did when he arrived at Chelsea, and they were 10th.
Sure, though that still had the core of a really defensively elite side. I mean, you look. I think Torreira will help a lot. He'll cover. So will Guendouzi. Those are good things. I think it'd be hard to get more out of Ramsey than Wenger did, actually. Like, Ramsey's goal scoring and assisting output was absolutely insane, but getting more out of him defensively, certainly I'd hope Emery does that. Overall, I think Wenger, generally speaking, did a really good job with the attack and a really poor job with the defence. And I think Emery will probably be kind of a little bit the other way around, maybe, to a slightly milder extent. But it's been an okay window for Arsenal. You could put them second or third in this list, but it's clearly Liverpool top and it's clearly Spurs bottom.
Yeah.
Guys, is there any, one else we've missed out who you'd like to see us kind of pick apart transfer-wise? Let us know in the comments below. And who do you think has had the best summer? Rank them 1 to 6. Again, stick it down there. That was supposed to be a quickfire question. We just spent 10 to 15 minutes on it. So looks like you're getting a long old episode this week. That is what she said. Next question comes from James Robert Hyde. Let's be very speedy with these gentlemen. Best header of a ball ever.
I'd say header of a ball. Personally.
3 candidates. Duncan Ferguson.
Very good.
Absolute monster. Tim Cahill. Again, another Evertonian
Cahill.
monster. And Nemanja Vidic.
Tim Cahill was a great shout. The neck muscles on that guy.
Mad.
I would go for Diambobo Baldé, who could head it further than he could kick it at Celtic. Said it once, I'll say it again. I also think Chris Sutton was a fantastic header of the ball, and Alan Shearer was an absolute meathead. What about you, mate?
I'll go for some guys who are around now. I think that Morata is one of the best with his head in Europe. Icardi's surprisingly good with his head. Obviously, Giroud and Mandzukic are exceptional. I'd always go for a forward over a defender, I think, just because it's a little bit more difficult what a forward has to do with their head.
True.
But obviously, defence-wise,
Cristiano
there are your
also.
Van Dijks, your Maguires. They are very good.
Fernando Torres used to be a great header of the ball in both boxes. I've never seen a forward win so many corners in my life when he was at his pomp, and Didier Drogba as well.
Oh, Didier Drogba, I think, is perhaps the best.
Yeah, Didier's good shout.
Next up, Adam Green. Who will be the next team to win a European treble?
Juventus, probably.
Now, for me, I mean, but the way, even the debates we had about the best leagues and how the other teams are strengthening during the first section, I think that kind of alludes to the fact it's going to be more difficult in the next 2 or 3 years for a team to replicate that.
I think Juventus is
much more evenly spread now.
I think Juventus is going to
Serie A are spending money, baby. They've spent the second most amount? Poor English from me. After the Premier League.
Yeah, I still think that Juventus are going to walk it domestically. But I think it comes down to the Champions League. Whether or not Ronaldo gets them over the line is like the Higuain situation, isn't it? So it's a risk, probably a risk worth taking for them.
Yeah, but Man City are always a shout as well. I mean, the Premier League's difficult, but when you look at Man City, they're so well set up to succeed in the future. And the question for them is whether they'll ever prioritise the FA Cup, whereas Bayern and PSG and Juve are always going to win the league and cup kind of at a canter. They can focus on the Champions League. You know what? PSG aren't the worst shout if they get their together in the Champions League because they walk everything else domestically.
Well, let's hope that's not the case. Boring. At Josh_LFC for life, what is your definition of the perfect midfielder? And is there anyone who has or will show these qualities? Wow. Perfect midfielder for you then, gentlemen.
Well, it depends, I suppose, definition-wise. I say right now, I actually think my perfect midfielder is N'Golo Kante.
Okay, so when I say perfect midfielder, the first player that crops into your head is N'Golo
Kante. But I don't know. I suppose of past, like Roy Keane potentially.
Yeah.
could do a bit of everything. Could probably play in
Obvious
2 to 3
answers like
positions.
King,
in there.
Vieira, aren't they, from the Premier League?
Vieira. Also, I really loved watching Iniesta, so maybe Andres
Steven
Iniesta.
Gerrard, Frank Lampard.
So when you're doing your perfect midfielder, you can say, look, Iniesta could be a bit stronger. He could do more defensive work. Like, you know, which those other guys did. Like, they're more rounded. Like, Yaya Toure is obviously great. I think when Pogba plays really well, actually Arturo Vidal, when Arturo Vidal was at his best, he was a guy who could do everything. Yeah. And those are the guys you always love. Like, Nedved was the same, though he played on the left quite a lot. And I think Naby Keita is looking like being that kind of player. Like, I love N'Golo Kante. I think N'Golo Kante is clearly one of the best midfielders in the world. But if we're talking about the perfect midfielder, I also want them to have a bit more attacking output.
KDB as well.
You know, and so Vieira, I don't think had the passing range. Kante doesn't have the attacking ability.
KDB is a fantastic shout. I also used to be absolutely infatuated with Kaka. I used to bloody love Kaka. I know he's more of an AMC, but the way no one's covered ground quite so elegantly as Kaka used to glide, didn't he? But like Gareth Bale. Yeah, Zidane, but again, big game player. Not necessarily that well-rounded player, I suppose. If that's the kind of if that's the way we're defining.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a
complete midfielder.
He's like an attacking midfielder, I guess.
Yeah. Any other shouts? Stilian Petrov, obviously.
Seedorf was great. Davids was great, but again, not a huge amount of attacking output. Seedorf used to bang them in from 4 yards. That was always fun to watch.
Makelele and his big 1 goal for Chelsea, which was a penalty, wasn't it?
No, it was a rebound, wasn't it? Did he miss the pen? Tapped in the rebound.
I think he did. Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so there are our initial answers. I think that's it for this week, gentlemen. I think we should wrap up the show. What else is on Football Daily, Eurofootball Daily, that people should go and watch right after this, Joseph?
Go over and watch the 12th Man if you haven't already on Football Daily. This week, Rory Jennings came in, joined us in the studio. If you haven't already as well, why don't you join our Fantasy Football League? Think you can beat us? Into the pin on screen now, all the below instructions, do whatever. Massive prizes. Probably undersold it there slightly. I have, probably. Come and join us, Patrick.
Oh, I don't know. Stat Wars is always good. Transfer review, transfer talk. While the window is open, make the most of it and go and check out our transfer shows, because I think that they're actually pretty good. I think we do a good job of finding young players. I think we do a good job of taking you through whether they'll fit the clubs they're going to. So check those out.
New season, new Van Straam, positive vibes. Love it, mate. Bye.